tell us a little bit about what you're doing with the Airbnb.
So just to play off the hobby thing, real estate was a hobby starting in 2010. And then slowly over the course of time, it ended up maybe 5 years ago turning into a full-time, that this is my income now, is either real estate brokering or real estate investing. So, and Airbnb, this short-term rental is kind of the broader term for it. That short-term rental thing has evolved into a big piece of the investing, which is, it's not new, but I still think it's on the front side of its lifespan in our culture. So we're pretty early to it, and we do a couple different things that I think we're going to talk a lot about. But between ownership and even renting these and having Airbnb or short-term rentals that we lease, which is a really, really interesting one.
Yeah. So you do both. You have long-term rentals and some short-term rentals, right? It's kind of a hybrid business.
Yeah, we've got long-term rentals. This is somebody leasing for a year, and it's one person. It's all the standard stuff you think when you think in landlord or rental. And then we've got short-term rentals, and inside of that, there's subgroups. One is owned short-term rentals, and one is short-term rentals that we actually lease from a landlord. It's called arbitrage, where we lease from a landlord, and then we make it into an Airbnb or a short-term rental, VRBO. There's a number of different.
So in essence, you are a tenant releasing.
You got it. It's a weird version of subleasing. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, one thing I want to go back on, and I think this is interesting to me. What business did you leave?
I left church world. I worked in churches as a pastor, executive pastor, musician for 15 years.
Yeah, I think that's interesting that he was a pastor and got his real estate license and has found a way to help as many or more people in a different calling.
Yeah, one of the things I heard a pastor say one time was that he used to be paid to be good. Now he's good for nothing. So I didn't leave church world as much as I just stopped getting paid by them.
That's true. So one of the questions that Colin and I have always been talking about was, why that? Why did you not start a taco truck? I mean, we're always curious about why someone goes from one thing to another, and maybe it's going to be an obvious answer, but, you know, what led you into short-term rentals as opposed to just, I'm going to own long-term rentals?
Yeah, so when the short-term model came later in the game. We've been doing it for only about 2.5 years. And I actually, interestingly enough, I saw a client of mine that we had bought a few properties with, or he bought them and we helped. And then he was running 2 of his own personally. And I saw that he was doing well, and I knew his goals of maybe potentially stopping his real job and doing that full time for himself as either a manager or an owner, or both in his case. And so I was like, well, let's try this with one. And then, so we started one of our own, managing it ourselves, and that's a lot of work, and ended up turning 6 properties over to him that were planned to be long-term, and said, hey, let's all head to our goals, which me owning properties and investing, and he wanted to stop his day job. So here's, boom, he's all of a sudden got 8 or 10 of these to manage in a heartbeat. And that's kind of what propelled us into that, rather than just sticking with solely long-term. And it helped diversify our investment portfolio too. If one of them's down, maybe the other one's up, et cetera.
Right.
And he does that full-time now, right? He manages a number of properties, and that's his gig now?
Yeah, I'll tell you, he's probably, so we helped him start the company with our initial 6, which has turned into like 20 now. And he's got another, he's probably got 70 or 80 properties now that he manages in the short-term space. That is astronomical. He is got to be by far the largest manager in Indianapolis.
I bet he has to have some serious systems to manage. I mean,
do I know this guy?
No.
So
I don't think so. You should.
You don't know who I know.
I don't know. You're right. You might know this guy. If nothing else, he knows you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So